Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and we have today the creator of a new podcast called Soul Sacral. Welcome to the show, Chelsea.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah. I don't remember if my wife saw your show first and said, hey, you should get Chelsea on, but, or this girl on, this lady on, or what it was. But we both scour sometimes. Sometimes we don't care for like a month, but other times we scour the YouTube for new channels and we try to get people's stories out there. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. What made you tick or go up until like maybe college age?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm from Sacramento and I grew up in a very strict Mormon home. Both parents were Mormon. My dad's family, they're like one side's pioneers from Switzerland, one side came from the South up to Utah as pioneers, and they eventually migrated down to Bunkerville, Nevada, where my grandpa was born, and my grandma was also born there. And then my mom, her mom had the Mormon line because her great grandma was Mormon. And the missionaries came knocking at their door when she was 9 years old. And her mom agreed to let them in because she knew them from her grandma. And she was baptized at 9. She was the only real active child in the family, but my grandma is also very devout. She's still living. My mom passed, but really strict. They obeyed all the rules. We went to 3 hours of Sunday church every Sunday. Went to seminary, during high school, which is early church class before high school. Went to the Institute of Religion. But growing up, I always had doubts and questioned everything. And I had this deep knowing from a really young age since I think I remember being in first grade, the first time that I thought, this is not really my cup of tea. I don't really believe everything they're saying. And just always one foot in, one foot out. Also, growing up, all of our family lived in Sacramento, grandparents, great grandparents, and my parents lived there as well and raised us there. My parents fought a lot from like the moment they were married. It was a lot of pretty severe fighting in the home. So that was really created an environment where it made me question. They're saying that you're going to be happy if you follow all the rules and go to this religion, and they did. They really followed all the rules, but they weren't happy. So it made me think, you know, they're saying one thing but acting like another. So that was a huge part of it as well.
Do you know what the
Um,
source of their fighting was?
yeah, it was actually usually about money, which I thought was so interesting because my dad had a good job. He was an engineer, and my mom, she had gone to college. She had a college degree, and she ended up going back to work when we were little. And she worked, but it was always this tug of war because later on in life, you see things differently when you're an adult. I was able to understand that my dad was very like clingy with his money and didn't want to really give her much, but she was also excessively almost a compulsive spender. And also
Mm.
my mom had really bad up and down mood swings, and that affected the relationship as well. So it was a lot of things, but that was the main fight about
It
money.
almost makes you wonder, had they not
Hmm.
had to pay tithing, if they
Hmm.
were able to just give whenever they were able to give,
Hmm.
that would have
Yeah,
reduced some of the tension there. Now those
yeah.
are two different personality types, right? The saving person and the spending
Hmm.
person. So that might
Opposites,
that
opposite
might be a problem no
personalities.
matter what, no matter how
Yeah,
much money you have. But
yeah, totally.
and I
Yeah, and
wanted to
they
actually
never separated.
go back to Bunkerville for a second.
Yeah.
When did
Hmm.
some of your ancestors first go to Bunkerville? Do you remember what year that might have been?
Okay, so my grandpa was born there. He was born in, I think, 1906, I believe. And
Wow.
they were there, before he was born. So it was maybe late 1800s, early 1900s.
So for
And
people that don't know,
they might have settled it.
it's near Mesquite, right?
Very southern tip of Nevada.
Yeah, it's east of
Near
Las Vegas,
Henderson, I believe.
a
Hmm.
little bit north,
Hmm.
Bunkerville.
Yep.
My map showing that it's near Mesquite, which is like on the way to St. George.
Yeah. And if you
And
go to the
there's
cemetery, all my family, a lot of the family is buried there. Even one grandpa that was a polygamist, he has a gravestone there with like four wives.
what were there some of the last names?
Tobler and Hunt. Hmm.
And I just happened to notice
Hmm.
that Mormon Peak is the biggest
Hmm.
mountain nearby.
Oh, okay.
So that's a
Oh.
there might have been some Mormon settlements around there that
Hmm.
created space for people. I know that there's a like a Mormon um, little place to go in Las Vegas where they show what the founding um, people there would life would be like.
Yeah.
There's and I don't know,
Mhm.
but but
It's
yeah,
a
there's
very,
lots of
very
Mormons in
small
Las Vegas.
town. Yeah, a lot. Yeah, we have some family there that ended up there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you did all your schooling in Sacramento, grade school.
I did all my schooling there, including my getting my bachelor's degree at Sac State.
Wow, so you're a hornet.
Hmm. Yeah. I loved that college. It was a great school. Hmm.
Yeah, and
I went to BYU, Hawaii for one semester though.
to study
Hmm.
surfing.
Yeah, I did learn how to surf there.
All right.
Hmm.
Do you remember what year you went to BYU Hawaii?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was my sophomore year. So that would have been, I graduated in 97 from high school. So I think it would have been 99.
So what do we get from Hawaii? We get punch, Hawaiian punch,
Hmm.
and we get shaved ice.
Yeah, a lot of yummy things.
Is there anything else comes from
Yeah.
Hawaii around here other than like pineapples?
I'm not sure. That's a good question.
But
Definitely the
there are places
pineapples, though. The Dole
and
pineapples are there.
nearby is the cultural center.
Yes, I was living on Oahu on where BYU is, and actually Mormons own a lot of land there. Hmm.
Did you go to the cultural center or
Oh yes, yeah, many times.
yeah?
Some of my cousins worked there.
Okay, so
Hmm.
cousins work there.
Yeah, I have family members that taught at BYU and teach at the high school there and stuff.
So right out of high school, before you decided on Sac State, what were you
Hmm.
thinking? And
You know,
what
yeah,
was your young woman's experience as a teen?
yeah, as a teen, I just struggled so much. I had just the worst self-esteem because the relationship with my mom was so dysfunctional at that point. I actually was, by the time I was in freshman in high school, I would always go in and out of following the rules of the church and then not, and then feeling really guilty and having like very low self-esteem because of that, and also the relationship with my mom. So my freshman, sophomore year, I was in it, like trying to do my best, going to all the activities and hanging out with a lot of the Mormon kids.
Early morning
And
seminary.
I went to all of that, all 4 years, even though I wasn't very active. Or I was active, but even though I wasn't like participating in the church the last two or the junior year. But yeah, I ended up moving out when I was 16 because it was so difficult to get along with my mom. I lived with a friend. And when I came back home and I was starting to hang out with kids that weren't Mormon, it was really peer pressure, which is a real thing. And I started drinking with them in high school, which I feel like is a normal teenage experience, but not when you're Mormon. And then I was just like going to parties all the time, constantly. But I had to go to church because my parents made me. So, and then I eventually started dating a boy that was doing the same thing, but also Mormon. And by our senior year, we had started to follow the rules again because eventually he wanted to go on a mission. And we really liked each other. It was more out of like a mutual agreement, like, okay, we're going to try the Mormon thing. We're going to do our best. You're going to go on a mission, and I'm going to go to college. But once again, by the time he had left for his mission, my freshman year of college, when they went when they were 19, then I was like itching to do my own thing, and then I went to BYU. I had a challenging experience there. I didn't like it. I didn't like the Mormon culture that was there. I'd never lived in a town that was primarily Mormon before. I'm from Sacramento, so it's very diverse. And just being in that town, there's a lot of people from Utah that go to BYU Hawaii, and I'd never really lived in that kind of environment.
Right. And like in
And
California, if you
it's
go to
way
high
different.
school, if you go to high school that has 1,000 students, there might be a dozen
Hmm.
Mormons that are active. There might be another
Exactly.
dozen that are not active, right?
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
look down whenever you walk by them if you're active. So were you one of the look down whenever a Mormon, a true believing Mormon, walked by you, or were you still be able to
No,
be friends with
we
them?
were all friends. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
I
that's
tried
good.
to be friends with everybody. Tried my best, but
Plus, if you as you're inactive, you could almost be like a project, right? They could say like, let's be friendly to Chelsea, and maybe she'll come back to church, or something like that.
I found that in Sacramento, well, we were in Folsom at this point, but a lot of people that were Mormon, half the kids were active in Mormon, then half the kids, what you would call them Jack Mormons, like were going to church because their parents made them, but a lot of them would be partying and not really following the rules. So,
Undercover, regular human beings.
yeah, exactly. Totally. Just being normal, basically. But
And let's see,
yeah.
when was the Folsom Temple built? It's called the Sacramento.
Yeah, I think that was built after I left. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it was built at this property. They used to call it the Mormon Center, which was where our ward met. Hmm.
I remember going to it when it had its
When they
when
blessed
you could
it,
go on
or
tours,
yeah, uh-huh.
and
Wow, you
there
went up
were
there, huh?
there were some baseball fields nearby down the hill a little bit,
Hmm.
and it looked like they were going to have a really good Mormony kind of a setup there. And I
Yeah,
don't know if the baseball fields lasted or not.
we did a lot of activities at that place. Hmm. The Mormon
Yeah,
Center.
opened July 2006
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
for tours,
I was
dedicated in
living.
September.
I was living in Southern California by then.
Yeah. And so what were you studying in college?
So I studied psychology. Yeah, I could not decide on a major. I think I had like five or six different majors, and then I started taking psychology classes, and I just totally fell in love. I loved every class I took, and I thought this is the one for me. So
Did some of your family dynamics
mm,
maybe play a role in that? Did you think like
probably, yeah,
I want to
gotta figure
understand
this out.
my family
Mm,
more. I don't want to repeat the same mistakes. I
mm,
want to be armed and ready for the
yep,
future. So I
yeah,
think I'll learn psychology,
yeah. I loved
understand
it.
it all.
Yep,
And then
yeah.
what happened after graduating college? Or did
So
you get your degree?
I got my degree in psychology. I went to BYU for one semester, left a bad taste in my mouth. I went back to Sac State to finish, and the boy that I really liked, he'd come back from his mission, and we dated for another like year or so until we realized that he was a Pisces, so very naturally intuitive. And back then, or in general, when you're Mormon, they want you to pray about things to know if it's the right person or not. And he's like, he came to me one day and he was like, I prayed to see if we were right for each other. And I had already had this desire to date other people at that time. He said, I don't think that we're meant for each other. And it was so sweet. Now looking back at that, he was so intuitive and he knew, and I knew too. We ended up separating and he went to
Probably could sense
Utah.
how you
Hmm.
were looking at all the other guys whenever you go out somewhere.
Right. And talking to other people. He's like, I
Right.
just get this strange intuition that we're not right.
Yep.
But yeah, it's so interesting because you feel such pressure to get married young.
Yeah,
And
you guys were able to escape that.
a lot of my girlfriends that were Mormon got married like right out of high school. And I was like, that's not for me at all. I
And
knew
they
it
had
wasn't.
kids before you graduated.
Yeah. And that was a big pressure on me that I felt at that time. And I felt like a failure because here I am, like 19 and 20, not married. Like a normal person wouldn't be married at that age. And half of my people I grew up with are getting married and starting to have kids. And I'm like, this is nuts. This is not what I want to do, and I'm not ready at all.
Right. And yet
So,
you weren't somebody that would just go
mhm.
clubbing or anything else. You weren't like radical.
No, I wasn't super wild at
You
that
were just
age at
sort of
all.
chilling
Yeah.
in a way,
I was
right? You're
still
just biding your
going to
time.
school and trying to learn about myself. And so he left, started dating other people. Um, I was still trying to be Mormon because I was with him, and dated other Mormon
And
boys.
there were single activities you could go to meet other
So
single
many
Mormons.
activities. Yeah, it was actually a lot of fun. But every time you'd start dating someone who's Mormon, after a few months, they're thinking about marriage, at that age. So I was finishing my bachelor's degree, my boyfriend, I found out he was looking at rings. And I was like, there's no way. I'm totally not ready, even though I was like 22 now. So I thought of the first place I could think of, which was a town I had been to in Southern California. I won't say it in the video, but I just moved there and got into the teaching credential program at Long Beach State. And I started a new life down here, um, kind of on a whim. And it was here that I really had my kind of, I guess you could call it a spiritual awakening, or finding peace, where I was able to leave the Mormon Church. I tried to be Mormon on my own here and go to church and everything, and it just didn't feel right. Like I looked back at my life and I'd always gone in and out, you know, feeling like there's so many things in the church that I just didn't agree with. I never agreed with the idea of this like white God sitting on a throne judging us. It never felt right to me. I was like, that doesn't even make sense.
Were any of your capstone
Mhm.
psychology classes about doing a research project or thinking about careers in psychology? Like,
I think so, yeah. I'm sure we did do
because I know a lot of
career
people that
classes.
at least go into the master's programs, they are training to be a counselor, right? They're training to be a therapist,
Mhm. Yeah.
and they have to learn all the things, all the
Hmm.
standards, right?
Hmm.
And a standard of a therapist is you don't tell your patients, your clients, what they should do, right? I
Yeah.
think you help them navigate through what their experiences are. And
Yeah.
so, you know, all of our training has been like, we've been told what to do. We've been told to,
Completely.
date and to get
Hmm.
married. And we've been told to go to church and read scriptures. We've been told all these things.
We've been told what to believe about life and death, told how to act on so many levels, which is so ironic because that's not even how Joseph Smith acted. They didn't even have the word of wisdom, they came up with that later. So it's really interesting.
And,
Hmm.
and actually, the word of wisdom. Yeah. So that came a few years after the start of the church,
He had
but
a
interesting.
whiskey bar in his residence in the mansion house.
Well,
Emma
the
made him
word,
shut it
right.
down.
The word of wisdom as a commandment came a lot later, right?
Hmm.
It was not a commandment when it first came out,
Hmm.
but it was like good advice on health in a way, right?
Hmm.
But the funny thing is, almost the same weekend that scripture was released, the word of wisdom was released, there
Mm-hmm.
was a nationwide like temperance society activity where they were
Right.
trying to women who had
Mm-hmm.
men who were drinking too much
Mm-hmm.
banded together to try to put some laws in place or some at least some
Yeah.
get people to think about the health of people that are maybe drinking too much and dying or doing risky things and it was just we all thought that only God could have done the word of wisdom, but it turns out historically
Yeah.
that it was just what the whole nation was doing.
It's fascinating when you learn what historically was going on during that time and how it affected what, like Joseph Smith's story about seeing God and Jesus in the garden. When you learn historically what was happening in that area at the time and what was normal, it's so fascinating.
Yeah,
Um,
and so Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon or dictated it, and
hmm
was completed
hmm
around 1829 or 8 or something like that.
hmm
And he had been working on it for a few years. So he was like 22, the age you moved down to Southern
Wow.
California, and he was really, in a way, trying to find his spiritual connection,
hmm
and you
Yeah.
were finding some of
hmm
your spiritual connect. What things connected with you down there?
Yeah, so um I just happen this happens to me a lot where I'll just serendipitously find like a book or something that really is meant for me to read. And I happened to be at a Kinko's I was in college, so I was making copies for school. Now they're called FedEx, I believe. And a book was on one of the little rotating stands, and it was The Art of Happiness. It's about the Dalai Lama and their beliefs in Buddhism. But it's written by a psychologist. And anyways, I read that book. It was literally life-changing. It it taught me things in the book that I had never heard before, which are now pretty mainstream. Just the practice of being present and
Mindfulness.
mindfulness, yes, just like the power of now. That book is similar to being present, that this moment is all that we have. The past is no longer in existence, and it's pointless to worry about the future because it's never coming. We're always right now. That was a
Right.
new concept to me that I'd never heard, and it was like so freeing because I had been so attached to my hurts of the past with such a dysfunctional relationship with my mom. It really talked about how attachment leads to suffering, which is a Buddhist philosophy.
So was
And
it Buddhism tied with sort of New Age stuff, or was it straight
I didn't
Buddhism?
I didn't know anything about New Age yet, and I would not have been open to it. That came like over a decade later. So I just kind of gently studied Buddhism, just skimmed the top of the surface. I didn't ever go deeper. Just the
Did
things
you
that were
meditate a little bit to see?
no, I didn't even know how to meditate then. But it's funny because I discovered surfing when I moved down south, and I would surf like 5 days a week, and I didn't realize that's a form of meditation. Just being in the water and being present with yourself and nature. I had no idea. So,
Wow.
yeah, that was just such a beautiful time. I was driving home from work one day, and I
I was
had
going to
this
ask you if you did any
epiphany.
sports, but go
Yeah,
ahead, tell your story, and then let's talk about sports in high school.
okay, cool. Yeah, so I was driving home from work. I'd finished my bachelor's degree, I'd finished my teaching credential. The market had crashed, so I was not able to get a job in education. I had one good interview that I was kind of banking on, but in the meantime, it was summer and school was starting as it was like September or something, and applied at a psychiatric hospital in social services, and I ended up getting hired using my bachelor's degree, and I stayed there for 10 years. So like this was like maybe 1 or 2 years into that job. I was just driving home from work and in this peaceful drive that I was having, it just came to my mind like, I actually never want to get married and I don't want to have kids. And that was such a pressure I felt from the church. And my next thought was, I actually never want to be Mormon. Like, I just don't resonate with it at all. It's only brought me grief and sorrow, basically, feeling bad about myself because I could never be that perfect person that I felt pressured to be, even though some people never feel that, which is great, but I did. And it was like I literally felt like a backpack of rocks like lift off my shoulders. It was the most interesting thing because I had never felt anything physically like that before. And I just felt so at peace. I didn't even, I think I told my sister who was still active with her husband, and I think she told my family. Like I didn't make any like announcements or anything because I just was so at peace, and I didn't talk to them too often. Um, I was, I had made peace with my mom and I's relationship through reading that book. That's what really helped me. And I just decided I was agnostic. I didn't know if there was a God. I didn't know if there wasn't, and I was at peace with it. It was just a letting go time in my life where I just surrendered and was
Did
enjoying life.
did some of your experience in reading the book sort of inform you by saying, this is such a good book, and Jesus is nowhere to be found in it? God is
Correct.
nowhere to be found in it, and it's such a good book. How can that be, right? Do you think that was part at all,
You know,
or it
at the
could have been
same, yeah, the same time I read that book, I was actually doing some interesting, I was finding some interesting literature just at the library, and I was studying existentialism. There was a movie that came out, I Heart Huckabees, which is so funny. It's about existentialism. And I was like, I want to learn more about that. That's interesting. So I went to the library and got a book. And then I actually studied the history of Christianity written by a Jewish professor. So I was reading that, and it was so refreshing to read something that wasn't written by someone who was Christian, or like, in the
right?
Western
Not
sense.
not
And
an
so I,
apologist, but somebody who's
yeah,
trying to tell as truthful of a
yes,
perspective
of
as they
what
can.
we know from history written in the history books, by historians about Jesus
A
Christ's
scholarly
life.
approach.
Yes, because he was a real person. Like they can prove that. It's written in history that he was crucified for what he did, causing a scene in the marketplace by the temple when he like turned over tables and things. But I just never resonated with the idea of sin, especially after reading the book, The Art of Happiness. I was like, yes, this is finally something that confirms how I felt that sin does not exist. It's just we're learning. We can't really sin. This is this life that we've created for ourselves. We set up the challenges for ourselves. That's what I believe. So there's no way to be sinning. There's no one we need to ask
Right.
forgiveness for.
If you're
It's just
climbing
a
up a
learning
tree and
experience.
you
Yeah.
climb up a tree and you fall down,
Mhm.
you're just learning how you should
Exactly.
better hold on
This is
or
not
better climb the tree.
yeah, you don't have to ask for forgiveness from anyone except for yourself, maybe, like, but yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So you have this job, you're working,
A lot of
and
epiphanies at that point. Yeah.
you've come to the realization you don't want to get married, you don't want to be a Mormon, you you don't necessarily want kids then as well. I assume. Did you say that?
Yeah.
Don't
And
necessarily want to be a mother.
I didn't realize, my life would be changing drastically a year or two after that. 2 years, I think, after that. I was so innocent and naive, and I don't really talk about this in my own YouTube video that I made because I don't know like what you can say on there. You can bleep this out if you want in
Sure.
this one, but I was so innocent and naive. Okay, I had, when you grow up Mormon, you save yourself for intimacy until you get married, right? I had done that. So my next thought after it was I'm leaving the Mormon Church was, oh, I
I
can
can have
go
sex.
have fun. Exactly. And I'm like, I'm not going to feel bad about it, you know? So I think by the second year, I was not crazy and super wild, but I did explore myself in life. I had gotten pregnant with my daughter, and I was a single parent, and it was very challenging. But because I knew who I was and I was so comfortable with what I believed in, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't hadn't
And
already figured that out.
And you had a job and you were pregnant.
I had a job. I
That
had
is,
my college degree.
yeah, that is so
Yeah,
different than being a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old
right. Yeah.
and having your life change, right? Where you
Mhm.
can't do the things that you might have been planning. And you
Right.
were established. You were an established human being, you know,
I
by
was,
this
yeah.
time. And so you could
Mhm.
accept it.
Yeah, it was still very challenging. And I just think about that a lot because had I not grown up Mormon, I feel like I would have been more knowledgeable about using protection
Right.
and being more careful when you're intimate with someone. And I wasn't because I was, when you grow up Mormon, it's like you're only having sex when you're married. There's no talk about it otherwise. You just
No
can't do it.
information,
You know, you just
no
can't do
health.
it at all. Yeah, so I feel like, you know, in my family with my kids, it's like education, use protection when you come to that time and place in life, you know. So I
Yeah.
try to make it different for my kids.
So
So, mhm,
another strike against Mormonism that you didn't even know would happen was like they didn't teach you to use
mhm.
protection.
Right, and to be careful.
Still
Hmm.
was following. The ghost of Mormonism was haunting you after you
Right.
decided not to be a
I
Mormon
know.
anymore.
I know. Yeah. So that was a huge life change.
So
And mhm.
you didn't partner with the father.
No, we actually kind of tried to see if it would work, but it didn't. And actually it's interesting. I don't know, it's just I don't know what it is, but I always gravitate towards people that grew up Mormon because we understand each other, you know.
Mhm.
So, we tried to make it work. He grew up Mormon and was just as innocent as I was. We were just so naive and so stupid about um sex education, you know, and it did not work out. And so then I was on my own with my daughter, and I was just praying to the universe that I would find someone that could be a good dad for her because at that point I wanted her to have just the best life possible, you know, and that I felt
So
like that would include a partner.
did your
Mhm.
you didn't want to partner with your daughter's father, but did
I probably would have tried to, but it didn't work out. He was not ready to be in her life.
okay, so he didn't
Mhm.
want really that much to do with it. He gave
No,
it a little
yeah.
bit of a try.
Hmm.
Did did he offer any support after?
No, not at all. He just was nowhere to be seen or heard from. And I just moved on because I had my job. I could take care of us.
So
And
he ghosted you, but you made it easy
mhm.
for him. It's like, okay, I'll
Yeah,
handle
I
it.
did. Unfortunately, yeah,
Yeah.
I did. Hmm.
I don't know, but do you still have any recourse? Just something I thought of. Could
It's
you go after him for some sort of child support
I
in
actually
arrears?
did. I took him to court when it took me some time, but when she was about 3, I finally was able to, or 2.5, like gather the paperwork, turn it all in. You know, you have to serve them and
Did, did
everything.
did somebody help you? Did
Mhm.
somebody give you advice, or did you
No,
just sort of learn this on your own?
I did it on my own.
Wow.
Yeah. It was challenging, but it was doable. And I did it through the court system, you know, and it went through. And as soon as they started taking money out of his paycheck, his mom, who I love, I'm actually close with her and communicate with some of his family. She called me up and just like a total enabling mom, she said, "Are you doing anything legal to this person about child support?" And I said, "Yes, I did. I filed for child support services. And it's his responsibility to
Responsibility.
pay that."
Yeah.
And she said, "He's if you could just stop doing that, he's going to be pulling through. He's going to be helping you out as soon as he can. He just got a job." I'm like, "Absolutely not. It's been like 3 years, you know?" So I
Right.
think he paid 2 payments and he was living in Utah, so they have very low money requirements for child support. As soon as he figured it out that they were taking money out of his check, he quit that job. And then I
Mm.
couldn't find him. But my husband now ended up adopting her when she was 3 or 3.5. And in California, once you do the legal adoption, that child's name is legally changed it from their birth certificate. They like throw away the old birth certificate and they give them a new one with the new name. They just automatically do it. And then any child support that's back owed is null and void. So it's kind of lame because they get just, you
Yeah, you
know,
wouldn't think that that would be
wiped clean.
California's
I
stance.
know. Yeah. And um yeah, so that
There should be
happened
something,
and
at least like, okay, 50 cents on the dollar, whatever.
I know, right? Totally, I agree. Yeah, it's not a good system. That's
Yeah,
how
that
the
is.
court system is set up though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
so
there's probably a history
she was legally adopted.
of
Hmm.
all that stuff that we just don't know about. But anyhow, so you
Yeah.
find this partner. Do you have a
Mm.
story around finding your partner?
Yes, and of course he grew up Mormon, so I felt safe. And it was really challenging. We fell in love. I thought things were great. I was just so naive and just, I think, kind of desperate at this point to find her a father and also someone who I loved. I had such a hard time actually allowing people in romantic relationships. I think because of all the dysfunction growing up, I still had so many issues that I hadn't addressed. So I guess in that sense I attracted someone who needed a lot of help and work. And so it was like having a second kid. It was really hard. We're still married and he's done so much and he's grown so much and he had addiction and I didn't know it at the time. So I had to deal with that. It was super challenging, and he would be sober for a little while and then relapse, and then he was sober for I think a couple years. Things were going good, and I had my son with him, so we have two kids, and he's actually been sober for I would say like 10 years now. But it's gotten better and better. But at the beginning, it was really, really challenging, and I didn't know if it was going to work, but I
And in the last
stuck
10
through
years,
it.
you haven't really
Mhm.
ever thought about going to church for your kids or any other thing, right?
No, I
No
never
baby
thought I
blessings, no rites of passage that are Mormony.
my daughter did get her baby blessing and
Okay.
it was when I was trying to work things out with her biological dad. So I was kind
Hmm.
of willing to do things in order to try to make that work. So we had her blessed and then with my son, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I wish I actually wouldn't have had her blessed, but I was just trying to my normal personality is like let's just keep the peace and like do whatever wants. That's kind of why I always went back and forth with the Mormon Church. Just
Right.
trying to it's like that people pleasing. You just want to keep the peace, just like when my parents were fighting at home, I just wanted it to be peaceful. So I
Right.
found over the years I tend to do that.
So you had mentioned that if you had learned about New Ageism, we'll say,
Hmm.
after reading
Hmm.
the book, the Buddhist book, what was the name of
Hmm.
the Buddhist book again?
The Art of Happiness.
The Art of Happiness.
Such a good book. Yeah, highly recommend it.
You, something happened over a few years, right? That
Yeah.
made you be more accepting
Oh.
to New Age ideas.
Yes.
And
Oh
what
my
happened?
goodness. Yeah. So I think I was 30. I was turning 30, I believe, and or maybe 35. It's like a blur now. I'm 46
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
And I had this desire to go get a reading from a psychic, and I wanted to get a new tattoo. So I was like, I'm doing both. And I asked around, and it's funny when you tell people this, they come out of the woodworks and they're like, "Oh, I've been going to psychics for years." And you're like, "You never told me. Like, why are you hiding this?" You know, a lot of people actually love going to psychics. So I got a recommendation and I went to one. And a friend came with me who both of us grew up Mormon, and she was so nervous she wouldn't even get a reading as well. Because, when growing up Mormon, they tell you that psychics are of the devil. And so
Did she go with you thinking maybe she'll get a reading, but she was gonna
no, she was just there for
okay.
moral support. Yeah, she
He
was
was
way
just
too
moral
scared.
support. And
Yeah,
even
I
while
was
you were
scared
there,
too. I was scared too, but I was like, this is what I want to do for some reason.
right?
So,
And so was it tarot cards?
no, she just read intuitively, and I could
Okay.
see she would almost like move her lips like she was talking to someone and look up, and then she would tell me things. And she told me things like, she's like, "Oh, you have two children. They have two different dads." And I honestly hadn't thought about my daughter's dad in like a decade, you know. I was just survival
Yeah.
mode, taking care of the kids and living, you know.
Right.
And she told me things about my life that were so detailed and just beautiful, you know, and
Now,
so
somebody else didn't palm your pocketbook and then
no,
feed
yeah,
her the information as they're
she didn't
looking
even
through
know
your
my
credit
full
cards
name.
and your driver's
Yeah.
license.
Yeah, and then afterwards I asked her, I thought she must be talking to my grandpa who passed or something, because how does she know all this, you know? And I said, "Who are you?" She asked me if I had any questions after, and I said, "Who are you communicating with?" And she said, "Oh, one of your guides. He's like a 40-year-old monk." I was like, "What is a guide? That's crazy. How, what?" I was just blown away, you know? And I thought, you know, I have to learn more about this. This is just amazing that she can do this. And a couple of weeks later, I happened to be at the library with my kids, place that I love to take them. We'd get little books to check out, and this book was sitting on the edge of the shelf. It looked to me, I had this feeling like someone left it. Someone left that there. I don't want to take it. It's this beautiful, like blue book. And I look over at it and I pick it up. No one's coming back, and it was called Your Psychic Self. And I decided to take it because no one else was coming for it, and I read the whole thing. And it was all about learning how to ask for signs from the universe, learning how to tune in and see your guides with your third eye. And it was such a beautiful book. And that was really the start of my journey. And then I found my friend's class who taught meditation and how to connect with your spirit guides. And I just started taking so many classes, how to use your intuition for mediumship to connect with people that have passed, and just all kinds of cool stuff. So I started training for years, and now I do readings and all that.
Do
Hmm.
you get a certificate or
Yeah,
do you
some of the
just,
classes you get a little certificate. It's like
uh,
doesn't mean anything. It's not like certified
yeah,
under any umbrella like a college degree, you know, but it's just
yeah.
fun. Yeah, I'm a
It's
Reiki
more like
master.
nobody asks you, are you
Yeah.
certified in this reading skill?
Right. Yeah. I
But
just loved
you
it. Yeah.
present yourself with with information, and so people recognize that you have the knowledge by performing or whatever.
Yes. It's like once you have a session with someone, it's really word of mouth, you know, like they enjoy it. There's validation, and then they tell other people, and yeah.
And
Hmm.
so, do you go to exotic places to do some of these trainings?
No, most of the trainings I've done locally, you know, we're so lucky to live in California. We have all these vast cities are all around us. That's one thing that makes me want to live here. Like, if we want to take a class on anything, sculpture, you know, jewelry making, we can literally take one like within 30 minutes of our house. So there's so many metaphysical schools around us, and the main class I took was actually online. Thank goodness for this technology that we can meet and connect and practice using our intuition.
So, no
Mhm.
trips to the Himalayas or anything like that.
I would love to go there, but I haven't been there yet. I've been
No
to
going to
Sedona. That's a
India to
spiritual
meet with the
place.
guru.
Yeah. No, but I would definitely go there.
Now, do you laugh at the
Hmm.
comedies about like the sex guru with what's his name? Same Mike Myers.
I don't
You
know
ever see
that,
any
but
of those?
Mike Myers is hilarious.
Yeah. So he has
Mhm.
something called the Sex Guru. I think came out 10 years
Oh
ago
my
or so.
gosh.
You got to
Yeah,
check
he
it
is
out.
so funny.
Just
Yeah,
like
he
I
is
have to
hilarious.
check out I Heart
Mhm.
Huckabees because
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think when that came out, I was
Mhm.
sort of too Mormon to want to watch it. There was maybe it was has an R rating or something, or
Yeah, I think it's R-rated.
and so
Right.
it was like, oh, I better stay away from that movie.
Yeah, that one was a really good
So
one. It's out
I'm gonna have to
there.
watch it.
It's very strange, yeah. But it's all about, you know, existentialism is really about our existence. And it has a lot to do with quantum physics. Like, do we exist or are we just an idea? You know, is this actually a reality or is this a hologram, basically, you know? So,
That's right. Just like in the movie The Heretic,
mhm.
Hugh Grant talks about the butterfly experiment or something like that, and that's where am I a man who's dreaming of a butterfly, or am I a butterfly who's dreaming of a man, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So you don't really know. We don't know for sure because
Exactly.
nobody external to our planet has said anything that you and I are aware of. We'll say, but you still rely on science. You helped with.
I love science. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love it when science and spirituality kind of collide and you'll get these scientific experiments that prove spirituality, which I love.
I mean, even love. Two people that fall in love. What do they say? Oh, they have good chemistry.
Yeah.
Right. What caused you to start Soul Sacral?
Yeah,
Or do we
I
need to talk about
really
anything leading up to it?
I feel like I don't feel like we do. Yeah, I feel like we covered so much. I started Soul Sacral because I really wanted to share my Mormon story. I'm so inspired by Mormon stories. Feel like you are too. And I love hearing people's stories of how they left and why they left the Mormon Church because it is such a huge deal. I always tell people it's as if you have a house, you have this beautiful house on this thick foundation, right? You have to have a strong foundation in a house. I don't know if I mentioned my dad's an engineer. When you leave something like the Mormon Church, it's as if you're taking the foundation out of your house and there's nothing down there. You don't know what you believe in. You're like in this limbo. And that's why I spent 10 years being agnostic. And I think we just have to be, for the people that are going through that, so supportive and, just caring for their journey because it can be really, and you have had a recent journey on yours, and especially your wife, like leaving that, you have to really kind of be kind to yourself and gentle until you figure out what you actually believe in. And you don't want to go down the rabbit hole of another cult. I think Mormonism is a cult where someone's telling you what to believe in. So, yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I started the YouTube channel basically and to talk about my spiritual journey
And
after that.
I sense that your channel is not about Mormonism, but Mormonism is part of you, and you wanted to
Mm-hmm.
set that as a foundation, a framework going forward, so that you can do other shows. And
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I remember talking with you. You said you wanted to do shows about all kinds of different things, all kinds
Yeah,
of experiences.
I have three that I've already recorded that I need to work on. One is about my experience with past lives, which is so interesting. One is about healing with the chakras and the colors that come into our lives and how they actually correlate with the chakras and how we can know what chakra we're working on based in that. So yeah, I have a bunch of other ideas.
So, is there anybody that talks about that you can see what your future life is going to be?
It's interesting. Our future can change all the time based on our actions. We do have free will. And every moment, based on our choices, our future changes. And it's like we talked about quantum physics. There's so many realities that could be actually happening at the same time. But yeah, our
Right.
future is up to us, basically, I
That
believe.
Schrodinger's cat
Hmm.
experiment. But anyhow, yeah. And
Yeah.
so everybody check out Soul Sacral. We'll have a link in the description. The description is below this video.
Thanks,
So it'll
Jean.
say something about the show, and then it'll say ... more. And if you click on the more button, it'll open up things that are underneath. And it seems so many times I have things in the description, and I'm not sure if people ever click on that. It's like, I saw the video. I don't need to do whatever. Or they just can type on their own, right? Soul Sacral in YouTube and do their own search. But, if you want to save a step,
Yeah.
click on the button down there. Click on Soul Sacral. Let's see. So you're not really interested in monetizing right away, but you wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? To make more YouTube
Do
videos.
you know about how many subscribers you have now?
I have not looked in so long. I need to really get on this.
Yeah. So when you do
Mhm.
why I left the Mormon Church video, you get
Mhm.
at least 1,000 views.
Nice. Yeah, I have no idea. I need to look at mine and get an update. I haven't done it in a few weeks.
It's really exciting that you're jumping in and doing these things, and that you're going to share your experiences, share
Hmm.
what you're doing. You're also going to use it to sort of advertise your services if
Yeah,
people want to
absolutely.
a reading? Can they do a Zoom reading?
Yeah, that's how I
Okay.
prefer to do them. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was thinking maybe if you're interested, we could do a show where we do a Zoom reading for me or something like that,
That
just to
would be
show people like
so fun. I
what
would
it's
love
like.
that.
Here's
Yeah,
the experience, right? So
I
I
would
did a
love
show a
that, Jean.
couple months ago with Megan Connor, and
Mm-hmm.
she is a coach, a life coach. And so we
Mm-hmm.
did kind of a, hey, I'm interested in your services. Tell me about what you do. And she went over her spiel and talked to me, and then what would happen next. And she says that she gives, the first visit is free.
Mm-hmm.
And so she didn't
Nice.
charge me anything.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll
Mm-hmm.
bring something like that at the start of the year. I've got a bunch of shows lined up heading into Christmas, and then I have
Mm-hmm.
vacay to do to
Mm-hmm.
Arizona, and it'll be fun to visit with you again, and we'll try to make a show out of it. All right.
Okay.
Thanks
Thank
everybody
you,
for
Jean. I would love
watching.
that. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. I appreciate you, and I love your show too.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone out there who's listening, but if you've made it this far, do the things like subscribe and have a great rest of the year. Bye bye.
Thanks, Jean.